She kept quiet for a long time. She stayed out of the cameras. She didn't go on talk shows. She didn't fight back against the rumors. But Meadow Walker, the only daughter of the late Paul Walker, finally decided to speak. And what she said didn't just surprise people, it stopped them cold. For years, people had been whispering about Vin Diesel, about what he really was behind the movie posters and the tough guy image. Was he truly the loving godfather he claimed to be? Or was something else going on behind closed doors? Meadow's words cut through all the noise. And the truth she shared was nothing like what the internet had been saying. So what really happened? What did Meadow finally tell the world about Vin Diesel? And what dark secret had been hiding in plain sight all this time? Stay right here, because this story goes much deeper than you think. Let's start from the very beginning. Before any of this drama, before any of the rumors, there were two men who became something truly special to each other. Paul Walker and Vin Diesel. Most people know them from the Fast and Furious movies. Two guys racing cars, blowing things up, and saying the word family every 5 minutes. But the truth is, the friendship between these two men was real. Way more real than anything they ever did on screen. They first met in the year 2000 on the set of the original Fast and Furious film. From day one, they clicked. Not because they were both actors. Not because they both liked cars, even though they did. They clicked because they both believed in the same things: loyalty, hard work, and putting family above everything else. Paul was quiet and easygoing. Vin was loud and full of energy. But somehow, they balanced each other perfectly. Vin once said that Paul made him a better man. That's a big thing to say about someone. But he meant every word. One of the most touching parts of their friendship was how Paul helped Vin understand what it meant to be a father. Before Vin had his own kids, he used to watch Paul with his daughter Meadow. He saw how Paul would change his whole schedule just to be with her. How he would leave a movie set early to make sure she didn't eat dinner alone. How being a dad wasn't something Paul did on the side. It was the main thing. It was everything. That changed Vin. It made him want to be that kind of father too. When Vin found out he was going to have a baby, the first phone call he made was to Paul. Not to his manager. Not to a producer. To Paul. And later, when his youngest daughter was born, Vin named her Pauline. He said that when he held her for the first time and cut the umbilical cord, he thought of his best friend. That is not the act of someone who just worked with another person. That is the act of a brother. So when Paul Walker died on November 30th, 2013, in a car crash in California, Vin didn't just lose a friend. He lost a part of who he was. He said it felt like someone had taken a piece of him away, and he would never fully get it back. Paul was only 40 years old. And in one terrible moment, everything changed. But here's the thing about Vin Diesel that people sometimes forget. He didn't fall apart and disappear. He showed up. Right away, he showed up for Paul's family. And most importantly, he showed up for Meadow. Now before we go further, let's talk about Meadow herself. Because she is the heart of this whole story. Meadow Walker was born in 1998. She is Paul's only child. For most of her childhood, she lived with her mother in Hawaii, far away from Hollywood and all its craziness. Life there was calm, simple, normal. But when Meadow turned 13, she made a choice that would change her life completely. She decided she wanted to move to California and live with her dad. Paul was overjoyed. He said having Meadow with him made him feel like a whole person. He would make her breakfast every morning. He would drive her to school. He would sit with her and just talk the way dads and daughters do when they actually have time for each other. Paul had been planning to take a long break from acting, just so he could be more present for her. He wanted to be her hero, not just on a movie screen, but at home every single day. And then he was gone. Meadow was 15 years old when she lost her father. 15. Think about that for a second. She was just a kid. And the person she had uprooted her whole life to be close to was suddenly no longer there. The house was quieter. The breakfast table was empty. And the future she had imagined with her dad just vanished overnight. Vin Diesel stepped in. He didn't make a big announcement. He didn't call a press conference. He just showed up. He started calling her, visiting her, making sure she was okay. He brought her around his own children and made her feel like she was still part of the family. He called her his goddaughter, and he meant it not as a title, but as a promise. Over the following years, people noticed how close Vin and Meadow had become. She would show up at events with him. She would spend time with his kids. Their bond was quiet but visible. And then in 2021, something happened that made millions of people cry happy tears all at once. Meadow got married. The wedding was small and private, held on a beach in the Dominican Republic. It was exactly the kind of wedding you'd expect from someone who had always valued quiet moments over big shows. And when it was time for Meadow to walk down the aisle, there was only one person she wanted by her side: Vin Diesel. He wore a light blue suit. She held his arm tightly. And in that one moment, without any words at all, everything was said. He wasn't replacing her father. He was standing in for him, out of pure love and respect. Vin's oldest daughter, Hania, was the chief bridesmaid. The two families had truly become one. It was not a Hollywood moment. It was a human moment. But of course, the internet had other plans. When the photos and news from the wedding spread online, not everyone saw it as beautiful. Some people started asking questions, uncomfortable ones. Why was Vin so involved in Meadow's life? Was it really just friendship, or was he using her story to make himself look good? Were all those touching Instagram posts and tributes to Paul just a way to keep his name in the headlines? Rumors started flying, wild ones. One of the biggest was that Vin had legally adopted Meadow after Paul's death. People on social media spread this story like it was fact. Headlines called him her legal guardian. Fan pages blew up with debates. And suddenly, the warm story of a grieving godfather watching over his best friend's daughter turned into something twisted and suspicious. Then came more accusations. Some said that Meadow's small appearance in Fast X, the 10th Fast and Furious movie that came out in 2023, was not her own decision. They said it was the studio using her face and her father's memory to sell movie tickets. They called it cold and calculated. They said she was being used, that nobody actually cared about her. They only cared about the emotional reaction her presence would create in theaters. Others went after Vin directly. They said he never truly cared about Meadow, that every kind word he said about Paul was performance, that the name Pauline for his daughter was a PR move, that walking Meadow down the aisle was a photo opportunity. The comments were harsh. The theories were dark, and they spread fast. But here is where the real story begins. Meadow watched all of this. She saw the rumors. She read the headlines. She knew what people were saying. And for a long time, she stayed silent, just like she always had. She kept posting her modeling work. She kept supporting the Paul Walker Foundation, the charity she started on what would have been her father's 42nd birthday. She kept living her life quietly and purposefully, the way her dad had taught her to. And then she spoke, not in a dramatic interview, not with tears and anger. She spoke in the simple, honest way that felt most like her. Through heartfelt posts on Instagram and in quiet public moments, Meadow began to share the truth about her life, about her father's memory, and about the man who had stepped up when everything fell apart. She posted pictures with Vin's children and wrote the words, "Family Forever." She didn't say it to clap back at anyone. She said it because it was true. Vin had always been there, not just for the big moments like the wedding, but for the quiet ones too. The phone calls, the birthdays, the moments when the grief got too heavy, and she needed someone to remind her she was not alone. She made it clear that her appearance in Fast X was entirely her own idea. She wanted to step into the world her father had built. Not to be famous, not to become an actress, but to feel close to him for just a few seconds on a screen that millions of people around the world would see. It was personal. It was hers. And nobody had pushed her into it. As for the adoption rumors, Meadow cleared that up too. There was no legal adoption. She still carries her father's last name proudly. She is, and always will be, Meadow Walker. The relationship she has with Vin is not about paperwork. It is about presence. It is about a man who made a promise to his best friend and kept it every single day, without anyone watching or asking him to. Paul's own brother, Cody Walker, said it himself. He praised Vin for the way he showed up for Meadow. He called it real. He called it right. And coming from Paul's actual family, that means everything. So what was the dark secret? What was the thing that had been hiding all this time? The thing that made people whisper and wonder and write angry comments? The secret was this: there was no dark secret. The story people had built in their heads, the one about Vin using Meadow, manipulating her grief, playing the hero for cameras, none of it was true. What was actually happening was something much simpler and much more powerful. A man loved his best friend. His best friend died, and he refused to let that friend's daughter face the world alone. That's it. That's the whole story. And maybe that's why people found it so hard to believe. Because in a world full of fake friendships and people who disappear when things get hard, a story about someone who actually stayed feels too good to be real. But it is real. Meadow knows it. Cody knows it. And deep down, even the people who wrote those mean comments probably know it too. Paul Walker left behind more than movies. He left behind a daughter who carries his kindness in everything she does. He left behind a charity that still helps people in disaster zones around the world. He left behind a friend who named his child after him and still talks about him like he's still in the room. Paul's character, Brian O'Connor, is still alive in the Fast and Furious story, still driving, still part of the family dinner table. Because letting go was never an option for the people who loved him. Meadow is not a background character in someone else's story. She never was. She is building her own life on her own terms, with her father's spirit guiding every step. She models. She runs a foundation. She is married to someone she loves. And she carries her dad's name with more pride than any award or title could ever give her. Vin Diesel is not a villain. He is not a manipulator. He is a man who understood that loyalty does not end at a funeral. That the best way to honor someone you love is to protect the people they left behind. He did not do it for headlines. He did it because Paul asked him to, not in words, but in the way Paul lived his life every single day. Some secrets, when finally exposed, turn out to be the most beautiful things imaginable. This is one of those secrets. And now that Meadow has finally told her truth, the world knows what those close to her always did. She was never alone. She was never forgotten. And the family that Paul Walker believed in with his whole heart, it never broke apart. It just kept growing. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Vin Diesel truly kept his promise to Paul? And what do you think Paul Walker's legacy means for the people who loved him most? Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the next video on your screen. We'll see you there.